So welcome everybody. This is the, what are we in? October SBE meeting. This is kind of impromptu because we were going to have an NAB this month, but that didn't happen. So we're having our October meeting with Phoenix and San Diego. Our presenter, Gary Stegall, is going to be presenting on frequency coordination. So thanks for being here, Gary. Get to that in just a second. We had our board meeting on Monday, a week later than we usually do. Main things we talked about was the Christmas party, how that's not going to happen, and looking into other options like a virtual Christmas party or something like that where we can still celebrate the season and our members. Also going to be continuing on with the YouTube channel, and we're also looking into some way to acknowledge previous LA engineers, either we're calling it, well, we don't have a name yet, but we're thinking about like profiles or bios, something where you can go on the website and look up people like Scott Mason, names like that, and kind of get a brief history and their impact on the LA radio market. So that's something we're looking into. As far as other stuff, we have the FCC meeting, which is happening for its members. You probably got a separate email, but that's Wednesday, October 27th, 11:15 on Zoom. Or on Google Meet rather, and they have a few items they vote on, board members, things like that. They're not doing their Mount Wilson barbecue, but this is their substitute for their annual meeting. So look for that email. In SBE chapter news, in August, so it's a few months ago now, Andy Cummings is the new SBE president. You can watch the SBE membership meeting and awards program replay online channel if you want to take a look at that. 2 webinars in October, one that's tomorrow on SIP series and one that's next week on the virtualized environment. So if you're interested in that, if you're a Member Plus member, these are perfect for you. That's really all I got on that. As far as chapter news, I know the last couple weeks they've been doing some Mount Harvard antenna swap out, I believe, or antenna repair. So a few people affected by that. Beyond that, the Mount Wilson email group list that's now maintained by the SBE seems to be going on pretty well. The only thing that we wanted to mention was, if you're going to be hiring a contractor or someone like that wants to communicate, they have to be approved to be in the group. Super simple. Go on the website, submit a request. But we ran into some issues where people are posting in the group. It doesn't go through because they're on the list. I think that's all I got for LA news. We're not going to do introductions, but if you have anything you want to talk about, radio, TV, broadcast, SBE, we'll do that in a second. Before that, Tony or Eric, you guys have any SBE news you want to talk about?
Yeah, we sure do. Really nothing in the chapter per se, other than we're keeping it alive. So appreciate the cooperation with the other chapters in SoCal to provide timely and interesting meetings. I'm really glad that you guys are recording this, because I know there's some people, some sports techs who are out doing games tonight that want to view this.
We can come back. We've came back last night. We can come back tonight.
Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead. Phoenix Suns I think the Suns home openers tonight, and one of my friends is engineering that, so he couldn't be here. But no, the only thing happening right now on South Mountain is that Vertical Bridge and their contractors are well underway to getting steel in the air maybe as soon as next month for a 300-foot self-support tower for a combined site for iHeart on South Mountain. The iHeart would be the primary tenants. Not sure, there may be some others coming along. It's going to be a massive building and a big structure with an ERI Axiom antenna on it. And so that's, I was up there visiting the other week, and it's coming along.
And that's a brand new tower, right? That's not a replacement?
Yeah, that's right. It's a brand new self-support 300 foot. And when everything is moved over to that, let's see, at least 3 guide towers will be removed, which the city's loving that. That'll clean up the site.
Yeah. Oh, sure. All the RF will be gone after that, right?
Oh, sure. It'll just be higher.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Eric. Tony, do you have anything you want to share?
Mute. my mouse. Sorry. Yeah, I'm glad. I appreciate people coming together like this because I don't know what we would do otherwise. We did an outdoor summer get together and we had a nice turnout, but I think people are shy when it comes to meeting up. So this is obviously the way we're going to be for a little bit longer. So thank you all for doing this. I have no chapter news unless Gary knows of anything, but
no, I don't have anything. Really.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tony. Good to see you. So yeah, this meeting's going to be recorded on our Facebook page, so feel free to share.
One quick request: if you guys
Yes,
could
sir.
just shoot me an email, so that way I can send you the attendance for tonight.
Got it.
Chapter reports.
Eric and Tony.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Marcos.
You want to throw your email in the chat, Marcos, just in case I don't have it? Please. All right. So without any further ado, I think that covers my list. The last thing was chapter elections for SB 47 or October. We talked about if you were interested to submit a nomination. I did not get any, so we are going to continue with the same board for next year, which I'm excited for. So one more year of SB 47. So that was the only last news I had. All right, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Gary Stigall, frequency coordinator for the NFL, and among a lot of other things. I'll let you further introduce yourself, Gary, but thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
All right, sure. I'm going to get right into it here. I'm going to share my screen, and let's see. It will be this one, I guess. And we'll go to this view.
That guy looks familiar.
Yeah.
That's pre-glasses.
So let's see. You're not seeing the right screen probably?
We're seeing. We're seeing the presenter view.
Yeah. I need to swap these.
Up in the top left, swap displays.
New share.
No, or you could just do swap displays upper left.
Okay. There we go. That do it?
No, that didn't. There we go.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to the previous. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's us. That was taken a couple of weeks ago in SoFi Stadium. It's a great place to work, I have to tell you. Anybody know what this signal is?
Well, that's your standard 6 meg TV, right?
No, this is the new Franken FM. KBF. This was a shot of KBKF in San Jose in March, but they've installed this also in Los Angeles, San Diego, Sacramento, and Chicago. And what you see on the right side is the FM carrier at 87.75. And on the left side, you're seeing the haystack of ATSC 3.0. Kind of a interesting and sort of pioneering way to handle channel 6. The FCC tried to fight this, but it's actually apparently, according to Venture Technologies, is allowed by their bylaws, by their rules. So they kind of had to allow it. But it's a more efficient use of the channel, that's for sure, and gives one extra FM signal at the same time. So it's kind of cool in that way. You'll notice that the FM carrier is about 18 dB higher than the ATSC3 carrier. So Daniel Bissett, who I talked to at length yesterday, said that it doesn't work very well for mobile. I think we would have to probably change the whole model of the way that we do transmissions, or broadcast at least, where currently we have a single mountaintop that does most everything. And the Europeans use a number of little hilltops and shorter transmission distances to accomplish their broadcasting. And so if we're going to try to use the ATSC3 signal mobile, we got a little work to do. Anyway, I thought that would be kind of an interesting way to open up here. This is what it looks like full screen, where the center is 85 megahertz, and this is a 10 megahertz span. Interesting project. Oh, this is me, 1973. I started in ham radio in 1971, got my first class license in 1976. Have worked in broadcasts both as a systems engineer, as a staff engineer at KFMB for 14 years, mostly during the 90s, as a director of engineering at XETV Fox 6 in San Diego for the American side for like 5 years. And since then, I've been a contract engineer and an NFL coordinator since 2012. I currently process coordination requests for the Rams, the Chargers, and the 49ers, and it's too much fun. So tonight I want to talk about the post 600 megahertz landscape with RF, the trends. And this is stuff that is new since I presented at AES a few years ago in Los Angeles, and the NFL techniques ahead of Super Bowl 56, which is going to be in Los Angeles. So the technology that we coordinate in the NFL is wireless microphones that are used for referees, production talent, stadium entertainment, and ENG cameras. And we also have IFB, interruptible foldback, or IEM, which is a monitoring system. And that's used both for the stadium talent and for radio and TV broadcast talent, both so that they can hear what's on the air and also hear the producer who may talk to them directly. Intercom systems are used at the stadium for doing their scoreboard production. It's used for coach to coach, for referee, it's called official to official, and for broadcast media production, the networks. We also coordinate two-way radios for stadium operations, broadcast, public safety, and coach to player. It's a little hard to tell what's going to come up at any given time because Los Angeles is a big city and a lot of those signals can travel long distances. So two-way radio is a little hair-raising from time to time. Microwave is used for inside the stadium for wireless cameras, as you see in the picture, and also for aerial from like a helicopter or a blimp or airplane. And then we also have ultra wideband player tracking. We try to make sure that nobody's interfering with that operation, because the tracking generators that are on each player are extremely low in output. So it's a hard system to protect. Frequency coordination started with Super Bowl 30 in Phoenix. It was called the Game Day Coordination Program. And it was, excuse me, originally administered by the SBE. Later, the NFL itself took over in somewhat of a divorce. So the NFL coordinates everything from the draft, the owners meeting, Pro Bowl, Combine, weekly games, and the Mexico and UK games. They just had a UK game last week. It used to be that everything was kind of done through email and with a dedicated laptop program. Now it's all networked through a server centrally, and it's kind of neat. I can do, most of the coordination I do at home here. I just go on a website and hand out frequencies all day long. And this is what my screen looks like when I first opened it up. I have a dashboard, and I take on from the top to the bottom, dole out frequencies as they come in. So we use that efc.nfl.net that you just saw. We fulfill as it comes in, try to do everything 5 days or more in advance. Channels chosen or checked for intermodulation as we go. The program it does a little calculation for all of the devices a given user is using to check for intermod. We don't bother really with intermod between users because generally they're not sharing the same transmitter space. They generally have them all sort of clustered together. Intermod is not something I commonly have to deal with, but it is something I have to be familiar with and look for just in case. An event frequency coordinator may need to confer with a local BAS volunteer coordinator for some frequencies in 450 and 950 megahertz bands. That would be like Howard Fine in Los Angeles, and Carl Voss in Phoenix, and myself in San Diego. Of course, San Diego doesn't have a team right now, so I do a lot of traveling. Upon completion, an email is automatically sent to the user. And on game day, we have the option of checking equipment against assignments. We found that just getting to know people is almost as important. So we kind of know who we can depend on to be on the frequency that they intended. And we introduce ourselves to all the people who come and visit for a given event. And we can take measurements of their gear as they come in. So when I'm doling out these frequencies, it seems like it's kind of easy. You just go, like throwing cards on a table. But I do have to consider certain things. I want to actually visualize the space that these guys are occupying. So I look at the signal-to-noise ratio, long distance versus short distance applications. For example, somebody just using a 20-foot distance between a stand-up reporter and their E&G camera receiver really can share that frequency with a full power TV station. On the other hand, someone using a long distance shot, typically radio is the worst case, where they try to pick up their sideline reporter from way up in the press box. And that's a distance of, it could be 70 to 100 yards. And that person needs a nice quiet frequency. So I give them something that isn't occupied by local broadcasters. We do occasionally in Los Angeles have the problem where the TV stations from San Diego come in on channel 17 and 19, and I get complaints. I can actually tell when the tropo is up by the complaints that I get from these guys on game day. There's nothing I can do because those are the only 2 channels that aren't occupied. So they have to just do the best they can with directional antennas and proximity. I give priority to the team first, the stadium next, the media production network next, and news media last. It's only because the news media can actually wire up if they need to, and they don't need much distance, so they can share with a TV station, as I mentioned earlier. I always protect incumbent users, neighborhood 2-way operators on the 450 band. You know, Home Depot around the corner does matter. The stadium itself has a number of frequencies that they reserve. Sometimes they just use them for a short period of time for like halftime and pregame stuff, but I have to be careful about that and make sure I don't get too close to them. And then, of course, broadcast services. We make sure that we're not interfering with any of the 950 megahertz STLs. Now, there aren't any really shooting over the SoFi Stadium, so we're kind of lucky in that way. And we were that way at Qualcomm also. And San Francisco doesn't seem to have a problem. You mostly need to, at 950, need to protect the receivers and not the transmitters. The power output is so low that you don't worry so much about protecting the transmitters. We do have troubles occasionally. You know, it's not all plug and play. We've had incidents of coach to player interference. I had a case where we actually could hear an interfering source in Los Angeles last year. And they had a CW ID every 15 minutes. So I copied that. And then Doug Irwin, who was sitting next to me, looked up the license number, and we figured out that the user was a community college about 4 miles away. So they sort of had first rights. So we had to move the frequency. Referees, mic problems, you know, you just need to make sure that nobody's on those frequencies accidentally. Sometimes people come in and they enter their channel frequency wrong. Their transmitter and receiver frequencies don't match. Sometimes they don't bother to coordinate at all. Well, it's just low power, or I'm just using it on the deck outside the stadium. I traced one on the first game of the year at SoFi Stadium to this guy who had a rock band out in front of the stadium, and he was ready to interfere with the person who was going to sing the national anthem. So that was pretty cool. This is what the spectrum looks like in Los Angeles right now. This is a little bit subjective, but the high-powered stations are in orange here. The lower-powered stations are yellow, and we reuse those frequencies a lot. The red are illegal. Those are T-band channels that are used by public service. That's a hard thing to teach people who have microphones that tune to those. I'm telling them over and over and over again that you can't bring a channel 15 mic in. And then we have 2 clear channels that are occupied by San Diego TV stations, 17 and 19. So they generally don't provide any interference. The cool thing about SoFi Stadium is it's 90 feet below ground to the field. So we get some terrain shielding, and we can use that to our advantage as long as people are willing to put their receivers at the field level and not at the press box. In Phoenix, I took this off of FCC data today, so I haven't actually measured them myself recently. I have had some clients there, I work for the Gila River Indian tribes there, and they currently have TV stations at 21, 19, and 28. We just put them on South Mountain. But there's a little bit more available spectrum there in Phoenix. And some of it's going to go away because K30mm is going to come on the air shortly. In San Diego, it's a little bit easier, but it depends mostly on where you're actually going to do your venue, your event, because the farther you are from Mexico, the more channels you have available. But the VHF transmissions are all done from Soledad. The UHF transmissions are primarily done at Mount San Miguel. So that makes things a little bit more technical, and it depends on exactly where you are. But it's nice to have 14 and 15 at the bottom that aren't occupied locally. So I'm going to go over the bands. There's a lot of this stuff you may know already if you're doing wireless stuff. This Comtech device has been around for a long time that works at low band VHF. I see that occasionally used by the networks, but not as common anymore. Low band VHF is burdened by the need for longer antennas, right? So you can't pick up much with the short antennas that you're stuck with. Electrosonics made another go at VHF, started to put out IFB T4 VHF devices a couple years ago, and those are heavily used now, especially for IFB, and they can put out a big enough signal that they can be used at some distance. I'm greatly in favor of those because they make good use of some spectrum that isn't commonly used. And so far in each of the markets, high band VHF is not fully occupied or occupied by low power stations. In fact, a station in major station in Phoenix just moved to UHF. And then you have the high band VHF, same Comtech type device that's used just above channel 13. That's kind of a handy deal, and people use that for IFB, especially for radio. So in the UHF band in Los Angeles, well, everywhere really, you're limited to 470 to 608, but so many TV stations occupy, as I showed you, that it's a little tough to fill in all the TV channels with all of the devices that people want to bring. Everybody wants a spare too, and sometimes we just don't have enough room for spares. Electrosonics makes good devices for 470 to 23. 470 is useless in Los Angeles because it is all T-band operation. Sure, Axiom Block A is best for most markets, and that seems to be what the major networks are bringing in now. It's a little more expensive, but highly reliable. It's usually used in a digital mode, and you can get a redundancy by putting two devices out. Sony microphones are commonly used a lot for E&G. You can get a wide frequency range, but you have to be careful to buy the right ones. Most of them only have a couple of TV channels that they operate in. So those are not devices that travel well because you never know which channels are going to be occupied by major TV stations. Quantum QT mics are often used. A lot of times they're so tiny that people like to put those in players' helmets to use for miking players, and they have a wide frequency range, so you can use them on just about anything in the UHF TV band. As I mentioned before, channel 17 and 19 are best at SOFI. You can't use T-band channels in the LA basin. I mentioned that. And in any market, TV channel 14 is a little dangerous to use because you can get blocking from two-way radios that are operating right next door in the upper 469 megahertz area. One creative solution that people have to the reduced number of TV channels that are available is the use of the little gaps that are still available up in the 600 megahertz band that were mostly taken over by telecom. 614 to 616 is perfectly legal to use, and 653 to 663 is also legal to use. And so the really smart guys, NFL Films and so on, like to use those electrosonics blocks 24 and 25. They are limited to 20 megawatts. We don't bother to enforce that currently. That's kind of between them and the FCC. Sennheiser G-band operates in 653 to 663. Shure is out there. And if you have some old equipment that works up in towards 700 megahertz, a lot of times the factory can mod it for you. So that's a pretty cool thing to do. This is what the band looks like. And here's the little gap between the uplink telco and the downlink telco. These are some of the electrosonic blocks. 24 and 25 I like to put in use. 26 and 27 are illegal. You can get STAs if people aren't using certain blocks. We've noticed that in Los Angeles, they're not using A and B right now, so we may be using those in the Super Bowl. Here's some information on Telex. Some of those are still usable. Here's a unlicensed ISM band intercom system. Clearcom has these, Coachcom, Crewcom. You'll see the Coachcoms used a lot at NCAA events, USC games and so on. The Rose Bowl and the Memorial Coliseum. Block 944 has been used increasingly. You have to be licensed for that. Most licensees are BAS licensees, although they will license them for other users now. Everything has to be coordinated with a local volunteer. I mentioned the 3 volunteers in our districts. We try to avoid channels in active STL paths. And you're actually supposed to, in licensing, name your operating locations. So these are not really good for E&G operations, although I'm not sure why they couldn't name a radius. I may just be ignorant of that law. These have been used quite well in Southern California stadiums. Block 941 is interesting. It goes on both sides, and you don't require, it's supposed to be licensed, as I remember, but it skirts the 944 to 952 band. So these are very flexible devices that can be used without BAS approval. This is another band that we're seeing increased use of, 1435 to 1525. These are FCC temporary licenses usually. They're secondary to flight training, and you have to purchase the rights from AFTRCC. And we're finding the big networks are using these for using a lot of wireless devices, sometimes video, sometimes audio only. That's about the most I can tell you about that. But Blue Steel is one of the manufacturers that BSI makes the Blue Steel microphone. And those are in use for broadcasts currently. 1920 to 1930 is also known as the DECT-6 digital band. These are used in Southern California for digital intercom. I never thought I would see the day where I had to count time slots, but I'm doing that. TDA time slots. We allow up to 40 within line of sight on the field. Now we can reuse those in places like the these can also be reused in the production room, up in the press box if they carefully locate the belt packs, and they can be used in the locker rooms and not count against the number of time slots on the field. They go by the name Clearcom FreeSpeak. Riedel has a system called Bolero, RTS Romeo, and they occupy the same space as long as they comply with the time slot limits. In theory, the time slots go up to 50. They do get a little bit slow if they're all in line of sight and you have 50 going at the same time. The NFL wants me to keep it to 40. The unlicensed band is a little tricky. There's a lot of Wi-Fi going on in the stadium, but they do successfully use wireless cameras for things like fan interaction cameras that the stadium has. There's a limited number of channels available, and we do coordinate those so that they don't interfere with, you know, stuff on the sideline, the tablets and the medical devices. And RAD intercom's kind of all in a boat by itself. It uses a narrowband application in both UHF and VHF. The belt packs are in one band and the rack mounted units are in another band. And this kind of allows versatile frequency selection. I can pack all these guys into just a very small amount of space. And so they don't get in the way of other operations. Last slide here. So basically we, for the Super Bowl, we, it was kind of interesting. Last year was the first year implementing some new rules. And one of the things that they did that I thought was rather radical, but actually did work out, is that unless you were a rights holder broadcasting the network itself, either for radio or TV, you weren't allowed to use wireless equipment on game day. Everybody had to wire up, wired IFB and microphones for interviews and fixed sets. So everything surrounding the stadium the morning of had to be wired. Everything that the media brought in for the game to cover post-game or whatever had to be wired, unless they were CBS or the radio network. Licensing is enforced for Part 74 bands. They really, I said fewer wideband intercoms, and that was true a couple of years ago. They really don't allow wideband intercoms during the games at all anymore. Short range operations during the pre-game activities, the rest of the week, they use occupied TV channels for E&G operations. I did all of that coordination from home for the Tampa Bay game last year. People would send in requests. I'd put them on occupied TV channels. If they didn't like the signal to noise ratio because they were going too far from the camera, they would have to wire up. They use VHF, as I've mentioned before, Comtech, Electrosonics, and RAD. Narrowband intercom uses RAD, UHF and VHF. Unlicensed is used for intercom. And 2.4 gigahertz, forget about it. Again, we were telling a lot of users the best solution is a wire. So if, let's see, how do I unshare here? Okay, stop share. Here we go. If anybody has any questions, I can take them now.
What do you do about 900 megahertz audio stuff? Those portable PAs I've seen, I've used some that have 900 megahertz.
Portable PAs, like portable power amplifiers, you're saying?
Yeah, like I have like Liberty Audio. They use 900 megahertz now for their boxes. And I do soccer, and I get interference from the scoreboard controller, right?
Yeah.
Which I learned the hard way. You know, and Electronics, of course, doesn't tell you that. You know, and Liberty goes, "Oh, we don't know that."
Yeah, I've never actually ever had to coordinate a 900 megahertz similar device, so I'm not really qualified to answer that any further. Can the guard band between TV channels be used for wireless?
Product on the market.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. What? Ask that again.
Answer his question.
Well, there's a question up here on the chat. It says, can the guard band between TV channels be used for wireless mics? Yes, we do use that. Occasionally somebody will come in, you know, Seattle and Kansas City like to come in with devices that only operate between channels 30 and 36. Well, there are no places to operate intelligently between channels 30 and 36. So occasionally I'll put those people in the little gap between, and they're just happy as can be. There's only about 250 kilohertz there, and they seem to be satisfied with that. It's kind of interesting how you can get away with it, but it does work.
Gary, what is the channel spacing between wireless mics? In other words, how many wireless mics realistically fit in a TV channel?
I try, yeah. So what I do is I'll fit 15 spaced at 400 kilohertz in a given TV channel on a regular game during the season. At the Super Bowl, they give you about 350 kilohertz and hope for the best. There are some devices that just hate that. And, you know, too bad, wire up. 350 is about the least we can go. I have had cases where for the NFL activities before, sometimes you play the odds, and you have people overlapping a little bit, and they won't interfere with each other unless they just happen to be passing by each other. You know, you can have like a 40-acre facility, and unless they're next to each other, they're never really going to know that. So if things get really desperate, we run out of space, we'll close space people, but we don't normally do that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate your attention, and I hope you learned something.
I did have one question, Gary. I noticed that the station you worked for, the call sign was KGRY. Was that your doing?
Yes. Oh, that's Gila River Reservation. They had a station on channel 21 at the bottom there. No, that has nothing to do with my name.
I thought that was clever.
It's Gila River. So we went with originally with KGRQ, KGRF, and KGRY. And then when we moved two construction permits up onto South Mountain for leasing, I got, we had retired the KGRY earlier due to repacking. And so we ended up with KGRX and KGRY.
Well, so you will, but it's K Gary to me. One question I did have in that 941, 944, those two, caps on either side of the BAS band for 950.
Yeah.
Who else are we coordinating for those gaps? Or is it just part of the unlicensed ISM type stuff?
No, it's not unlicensed ISM. These are typically microphones and IFBs.
So the other itinerant users would be licensed non-BAS
Yes.
user. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do know you were talking about, BAS users getting licenses. I do know that what we've done, and Carl told me, advised me to do is as a, BAS operator, you basically just get a license for the range of frequencies.
Yes.
And the only thing it buys you is that, you're a primary user then.
Yes.
So, in theory, you go to the coordinator and you could knock somebody else off. But again, it's kind of at the whim of the coordinator, because like you said, even though that may be true in reality, you're going to an NFL game, an NFL product, they get to dictate who uses what,
One of the things I do at 900 megahertz is I give a little more space, because you realize that the higher frequency you go, the more precise a filter has to be made to cut out interference. So those guys at 900 megahertz are typically given at least 500 kilohertz, if not 600 per channel. And I've been doing that lately, and I think everybody's happier.
Yeah, I know we've seen some manufacturers that needed 700, but a lot of that, like you said, has to do with their front ends and stuff, not as much of the limitations.
Correct. Yeah, and it was a receiver limitation.
Well, anybody else have questions for Gary? This is all super informative and thorough. Anything else?
Hey, Gary.
All right.
Where can we get one of those 20 megawatt wireless mics you talked about? Oh, that's a little M. I missed that. Have a good evening. Good show.
Thank you, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Thank you, Gary.
Gary, you want to throw your email in the chat maybe? And if anyone has any questions, they can shoot you an email after.
Oh, certainly, yes. And I'd say a request for slides. Yeah, I can do that. Gary at signalwiz.com.
Well, again, thank you, Gary. I appreciate the time and very, very informative.
You're welcome.
Finishing up with a few chapter items. So next month is November. That will be our November meeting. That's a odd month. So historically, that's going to be our lunchtime meeting. It's going to be the second Tuesday. We'll send an email like we always do. That will be the 9th. I know we're working on some ideas. Doug's working on some ideas. We had a presenter come last week and do a video just so we can present it. Basically, it was like a tech tour by Ocon Solutions. So that, I think that might be next month, but we're going to finalize that. Look for that email. Two other things I wanted to mention: the job at KLAA, the 830, right? 830, 870? No, 830 operator in Anaheim. They have the Angels. They're looking for a chief engineer, chief operator. Paul Sarkisian is retiring, longtime SPE member. Also, I got an email. What's the guy's name? Kevin Plum. I guess he's leading the project at KSPN to move the move 710 out to City of Industry. He's looking for people with heavy RF experience and asked if I knew anybody, and I said I would pose it to the group. So if you're interested, let me know. I can definitely forward your contact over to Kevin, and that's all I got. So have a good weekend, have a good month, and we'll see you in November 9th for our lunch SB meeting. Everyone.